All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going on an absolutely incredible journey through time today, tracing the arc of human civilization. We are literally starting from the dirt of tiny ancient farming villages, and we're going to follow that path all the way to the paved streets of sprawling global empires. It's a fascinating story about how small, seemingly simple innovations fundamentally changed how human beings lived, worked, and interacted with the world around them. But before we jump back thousands of years, do me a favor, just take a quick look around your room right now. Ask yourself, what objects made of iron or steel do you use almost every single day? I mean, maybe it's the cutlery in your kitchen, the frame of the chair you're sitting on, some tools in a toolbox, or honestly, even the structural supports of the building you're in. We take these materials completely for granted today, but as you'll see, the very first time someone pulled iron from the earth and forged it into a tool, it kicked off a technological revolution that fundamentally altered our history, roughly 3,000 years ago. So here's the roadmap for our explainer today. We're going to cover 1. Iron tools in agriculture. 2. Who lived in villages. 3. Markets and thriving towns. 4. Mathura, a bustling hub. 5. Mastercrafts and guilds. And finally, 6. Global trade to Rome. Section 1. Iron tools in agriculture, the spark of civilization. Let's start right in the dirt. If we map out this history, we can see a really clear cause and effect loop. About 3,000 years ago, the use of iron begins in the subcontinent. Then, fast forward 500 years, so about 2,500 years ago, and we see a massive explosion in the use of iron. But look at what happens right alongside it. We get the sudden appearance of cities and punch-marked coins. By 2,300 years ago, society had advanced enough to compose epic sangam literature. And by 2,200 years ago, we see global trade settlements like Arakamedu. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that none of those later cities or trading ports exist without that first spark, the adoption of iron. And when I say iron, I'm not talking about weapons here. We're talking about essential agricultural tools like sickles, tongs, and axes. Just think about the massive difference an iron axe makes compared to a stone one when you're trying to clear a dense forest for new farmland. Or imagine harvesting crops with a sharp iron sickle instead of some brittle piece of shaped rock. It's a game changer. These specific tools revolutionized agriculture. They allowed people to clear more land, farm it way more efficiently, and produce a massive surplus of food. And when a society produces more food than it needs to simply survive, well, that's when you get the freedom to build cities. Section 2. Who lived in villages? The social ecosystem. So with these new tools creating agricultural surpluses, what do the villages actually look like? Who is living in these settlements? Well, these ancient villages weren't just a monolith of identical farmers. They were highly structured social ecosystems. Down in the southern Tamil region, you had the large landowners known as the Velalar, you had ordinary plowmen known as the Uzavar, and the landless laborers and slaves called the Kadesiar and Adime. Now, if we compare that to the northern region, we see a very similar hierarchy. You've got powerful village headmen at the top, independent farmers in the middle, and landless laborers known as Karmakara at the bottom, who earned their living working on fields owned by others. Now, you might actually be wondering, how on earth do we know these incredibly specific Tamil terms for farmers and laborers from over 2 millennia ago? Well, we know them from Sangam literature. These are some of the earliest and most foundational works in Tamil, composed around 2,300 years ago in these massive assemblies of poets in the city of Madurai. It is such an amazing reminder that these aren't just dry textbook terms, right? These were the actual titles of real, breathing people, documented in stunning poetry that has somehow survived for thousands of years. Section 3. Markets and thriving towns, the bustling local hubs. Moving our narrative down those dirt paths from the small villages, let's see how these local hubs bridge directly to the present day. From the 8th century onwards, the subcontinent became dotted with small towns that basically emerged from the largest, most successful villages. And if you live in or have visited a modern Indian town, these ancient concepts are going to sound incredibly familiar. Back then, villagers brought their surplus produce to a central marketplace called a mandapika, which evolves directly into what we call a mundi today. And they shopped on market streets lined with artisans known as a hatta, which is the direct ancestor of the modern hot. The physical blueprint of local commerce was basically established thousands of years ago. And let me tell you, these markets were absolutely exploding with life. Just try to imagine the sensory overload of walking into one of these ancient towns. You wouldn't just see local wheat or rice. Traders traveled from town to town, bringing exotic goods from far and near. You'd hear the stomping of traded horses, you'd smell the sharp, piney scent of camphor and the rich aroma of saffron. You'd see vibrant piles of betel nut, salt, and highly prized spices like pepper. These towns were just vibrant, chaotic intersections of regional exchange. Section 4. Mathura, a bustling hub, the rise of the metropolis. Okay, let's zoom out a bit to a major case study, the ancient metropolis of Mathura. Mathura wasn't just a market, it was a sprawling, religious, political, and commercial epicenter. And because of the massive population and all the wealth flowing through it, the division of labor became hyper-specialized. In an ancient city like Mathura, you didn't just have generic craftsmen, you had a dizzying array of highly specific occupations. We're talking dedicated goldsmiths, ironworking blacksmiths, fine weavers, skilled basket makers, delicate garland makers, and get this, even specialized perfumers. The sheer hustle and bustle of city life demanded this incredible variety of specialized skills. And the coolest part? We aren't just guessing about who lived there. The ancient residents of Mathura literally carved their own history into stone slabs and statues for us to find. Archaeologists have recovered tons of short inscriptions recording gifts made to local monasteries and shrines. And what is so fascinating is that these gifts weren't just from kings and queens or wealthy officers. They were recorded by everyday merchants and the very craftsmen we just talked about. This shows us a society with a robust middle class of artisans who actually had enough disposable wealth to sponsor religious monuments. Section 5. Master Crafts and Guilds, Organizing the Economy. Now, you might be asking, how do you manage thousands of specialized perfumers, weavers, and blacksmiths in one city? That explosion of specialized trades required a completely new level of economic organization, and the solution was the shrinny. A shrinny was essentially an ancient guild, a really powerful association of craftspersons and merchants. Instead of every single weaver fighting every other weaver for raw cotton, they organized. The shrinnies regulated the quality of production, provided rigorous training for apprentices, organized trade routes, and procured raw materials in bulk. Some shrinnies even functioned as banks, where rich men and women could literally deposit their money. They were the absolute economic backbone of these thriving towns. Check out the white markings on this piece of everyday ancient pottery. Those are Tamil Brahmi inscriptions, and this tells us a profoundly important story. Literacy wasn't just restricted to royal palaces or sacred temples. Everyday items made by everyday craftspeople for everyday use bore the marks of a highly advanced, literate society that kept records, branded their goods, and communicated through writing. And thanks to these shrennies, the level of artistry that emerged from these towns was just staggering. Archaeologists have found small tanks that were actually specialized dyeing vats used to infuse cotton and silk with brilliant, vibrant colors. We found ample evidence of artisans taking raw glass and meticulously crafting it into intricate beads and shaping semi-precious stones into stunning luxury jewelry. These towns weren't just surviving, they were creating high-end, luxury manufactured goods. Section 6. Global Trade to Rome, the Macro Connection. Because here's the thing. All of those beautiful dyed clothes, glass beads, and spices produced by local artisans, they didn't just stay in India. While these thriving towns expanded in the subcontinent, another massive empire was developing simultaneously halfway across the world, Rome. Rome was the capital of one of the largest empires of the ancient world, famous for massive structures like their giant aqueducts. And they had a huge, hungry market for the exact luxury goods, spices, and precious stones being produced by Indian craftspersons. And we have the receipts right in the ground. At coastal settlements like Arika Madu, which flourished between 2200 and 1900 years ago, archaeologists have found undeniable evidence of direct, large-scale maritime trade contact with the Roman Empire. Roman pottery, Roman lamps, and Roman glass have all been unearthed on the Indian coast. It ties our entire narrative together perfectly. Think about it. The iron axe that helped a village farmer clear a field created a food surplus. That surplus fed an artisan in a town. That artisan made a beautiful glass bead. And a merchant sold that bead onto a ship that sailed across the ocean all the way to the Roman Empire. Which brings us right back to you. Think about your own city, your own village, your own local market. Look at the people working around you today. How are their occupations, their businesses, and their daily routines similar to or different from the perfumers and blacksmiths of ancient Mathura? When you realize that the local mundi down the street is part of an unbroken 3,000-year-old chain of human civilization, it really changes how you look at the world, doesn't it? Keep looking for the history hidden in your everyday life.